Come.
Okay, so now it's almost 1 o'clock Eastern time, Western California time. Good morning, everybody from the West Coast. Good afternoon, East Coasters, some Midwesterners, hello. So the CEASD guidelines with these meetings is to go ahead and everyone stop video, and we'll allow the 2 interpreters to remain on the screen as well as the presenter. For a total of 3 folks on screen, it'll make it a lot easier on the eyes. And if you have a comment, a question, something to interject in, you can start your video at that time. And so we will moderate that and call upon people to make sure it's smooth going. Everybody got it? So go ahead and stop your video at this time. Okay, folks are starting to stop video. Okay. I know some of you are new to Zoom and you're unfamiliar with it. So if everyone could please stop video. Hey there. Okay, please go ahead and stop video. And then that way it'll be much easier having just the 2 interpreters and presenter on screen. So please stop your video. I'm looking at you. Yep, go ahead, turn off your video. Anthony, can you turn off your video, please? Yep. Okay, so I'll repeat guidelines since a few of you just joined us late. The guidelines for CEASD workshops. I know we have quite a few participants, which ends up cluttering the screen, making everyone quite small, which is very difficult to see people communicating. So we try to keep as few as up on screen as possible. That means the interpreters and the presenters. So we'll just have these 3. Everyone else, please stop your video feed. Whenever it is that you want to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand. You can do that by starting video. Please be sure to also mute your audio. Thirdly, please rename your screen. So for example, if you see on mine, it says David Giesland in ISD, Indiana School for the Deaf. So you can do that by right-clicking on your image. There's the blue icon with the 3 white dots. Click on that and you will see rename is an available option there. And at that point, you can rename. And so people will know, oh, you're from Riverside, oh, you're joining us from Arkansas, or where have you, okay? Hi, Tom, please stop video, okay? We've got your name there, but please hide, or I can hide all the participants as well. Okay, so now I can see 5 people. Tom, please stop your video, if you don't mind. Can you see me, Tom? Yes, hi, please stop your video. Yeah, right now we're having the superintendent meeting. And so we've got several deaf schools here. They're participating. We want to ensure all of our children thrive. And part of that is our mission. And this is just one example. This is bringing all the schools together to be able to information share, talk about athletics specifically. And Tom's saying you're freezing. So we want to help you improve. We know oftentimes you're playing against public schools. Oftentimes they beat us, and we see deaf children out in the mainstream who are playing against these deaf schools, and they want to be a part of it. And athletics programs are exploding across the nation as a result of that. And so part of CEASD's goal is really just to see everyone improve, see our deaf children thrive. I want to thank Texas School for Deaf for loaning us their athletic director, Chris Hamilton, who also happens to be the president of the NDIAA. So he will be leading our discussion. If you're wanting to join, please raise your hand. Tom, I'm going to turn off your video for you. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Chris, I will turn the floor over to you. Remember, if anyone wants to make a comment or ask questions, please raise your hand, start video. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to the American School for the Deaf for lending your Zoom services. Also, thank you, Katie and Lee, and to your school for providing interpreters. All right, Chris, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Great, David, thank you so much. All right. I know it always feels a little bit funny to talk to a camera instead of talking to the live person, which I prefer. Anyways, hello everyone. I hope you're all doing all right during this time, continuing to stay healthy, stay safe, I know. I do want to take some time, I know, to talk about the COVID impact on the deaf schools and on athletics in general, all of the cancellations of spring seasons and events and what we're doing during the summer, during off seasons in terms of strength and conditioning and workouts and camps and the questions that we have for the upcoming fall. I'm sure there are several questions out there still circulating around. And unfortunately, I think many of us do not have the crystal ball that we need to predict what's going to happen and what's coming next. So we are right now just sitting on pins and needles, wondering what's going to happen. So I do want to just have a discussion, share some ideas, share concerns that may be out there. I know first, before we kind of get into the summer and fall sessions, focusing on spring, my heart bleeds for those spring season teams, especially those seniors that graduate this year, and spring sports being canceled and their seasons ending early. That definitely had a big impact on them. And I know that many of them were sad that their seasons didn't continue. Do you feel, similarly? Do you feel the same way? Any comments or questions related to spring sports? Okay, well, that's fine. Hey, everyone, please, this is your opportunity to share ideas, share your stories. We want to hear from your experiences. This is your platform to have some information sharing. Please participate. And I can even add, did you have some kind of Zoom meeting with your spring sports teams, explaining the situation, motivating kids, the spring athletes, trying to provide that support during this difficult time? Yeah, I'll go ahead and share if you want me to share. So I'm also a teacher as well as the athletic director. And we had Zoom classes every day for teaching, and that was definitely a different experience as opposed to being in the classroom and having that in-person interaction, and then on Zoom, just that awkwardness that came with it. We met weekly with our athletics with our athletes to make sure that we said, hey, stay in shape, keep working out. We provided 20 different exercises that our student athletes could do, the cardios. And so if they didn't understand the text that we sent, then there were a video explaining it in ASL. So we had sort of 4-week cycles that you would do something every week, and then you would go back to the first week and repeat every 4 weeks. Tommy, thank you for that comment. Hello, yeah, I'm from Oregon School for the Deaf, OSD. Hi, Chris, nice to see your face, finally. We've been emailing all this time. I did want to share that we had one senior female athlete that was really looking forward to breaking the record for discus. I'm sure you know her. She's well known in the deaf schools tournaments and everything, but definitely a female senior athlete, and was looking forward to breaking that record, and just because of this didn't have that opportunity. We did also try to get together with our student athletes, but they seem to have lost motivation after about 2 weeks of doing virtual meetings in terms of preseason training for the fall, Right now it's non-existent at this time. Thank you, Boaz. Lee? Hey, Chris. Yeah, so I'm Lee from Minnesota State Academy for the Deaf. And I guess I just want to share, in terms of spring sports cancellations, we were disappointed for sure, but the coaches continue hosting Zoom team meetings, explaining the strategy, the plan for each week while we were off, and coaches explaining how to do certain things the right way for sports. And that was nice to see the kids, and the video is kind of freezing. But as the other gentleman said, you know, the motivation to maintain that has lessened. So we are looking forward to, you know, we were looking forward to certain meets that were coming up, and they just aren't happening anymore. And so trying to maintain high motivation and high skill for the upcoming seasons is a little bit of a struggle. That's one part. But secondly, we have coaches, and we have a nice website. It's darebee.com, and it has a great list of different workouts that athletes could do and participate in. So again, it's darebee.com. So, oh, great, Lee, thanks. Hey, Carl, go for it. Hey, Chris. So my name is Carl, and I'm from the Lexington School for the Deaf. And I definitely completely understand what Lee was saying. Getting into this, we struggled. Spring sports were definitely our struggle. Our students were highly motivated to get into track, softball. And now with COVID-19, students seem to completely become lackluster, and very disconnected. Now I've seen, you know, we have a few come up with ideas of how to, you know, have ideas of keeping that motivation for spring sports. And now we're thinking about those fall, winter sports. You know, we have several athletes that do 2 or 3 sports a year. So we're trying to increase that number because of coronavirus so that they do have athletic experience. Someone else? Oh, Mason, yeah. Hey, I think for us at the American School for the Deaf here, our biggest impact was the track and field coach and those teams. You know, they worked so hard to really grow that program, and we expanded in student athlete engagement, and the coach was just heartbroken when the season got canceled. And so that was very difficult for the coach for all the hard work that he had done pre-season. So that was, I'm sure it's hard for some of the other coaches at other schools as well. Yeah, I definitely understand that. You know, there's it doesn't only impact athletes, but coaches as well. Hey, I'm the athletic director for, I'm sorry, I missed the School for the Deaf. So I had one player that came back from surgery the previous year, really excited to play softball, and our other female athletes were excited to be able to go to the Hoy tournament at Fremont. And then when COVID-19 happened, man, did that hurt our athletes. And, you know, we know health comes first. But finally, you know, we set up a great track. We didn't have it last year as much. It wasn't as strong. And so we had more female athletes involved this year, and it really grew. Our boys' numbers have sort of stayed stable, but the girls really grew. And we had 3 new athletes that really came back for these seasons, and we're very excited. One is well known amongst the deaf schools and the tournaments we go to. And so because of COVID-19, our athletes just sort of kind of hit rock bottom. And so we had to really follow up with our athletes, and coaches were emailing our athletes and trying to meet more one-on-one with them and get together in groups as well, making sure everyone's doing okay, providing that support for them. But yeah, it was definitely a disappointment for us here. Okay, so I showed up first. JJ saying, all right, hello everyone. Yeah. Okay. All right. Whew, you are a C boy, California boy. Okay, yeah. When coronavirus hit, I think for athletes, I definitely understand it was hard to keep in contact with some of them. They didn't have technology devices available or contact available. And so that was difficult. But I think more disappointed were the coaches in terms of needing to contact the athletes. I mean, several of our coaches did that, but it was hard to contact many of our athletes. And it's freezing. So yeah, I think what's happening is that a lot of them are just kind of sitting on their hands until next year comes around. Coaches, we're definitely disappointed in this. You know, we're trying to expand some programs and we want athletics year round, which is a challenge. Some of our athletes kept in contact with coaches, some of them didn't. But when we all come back, you know, in the fall, it's also going to be different. And we're really going to have to, you know, look forward as to how we're going to approach that, because I am dreading having the Zoom every day. Yeah, and I just want to add here, you know, we've asked our coaches to provide or to try to contact their teams once a week, just to have, you know, conversation, do a little activity virtually. And it seems like the team has enjoyed that. It's, you know, that brotherhood connecting with their teammates, our sisterhood connecting with their teammates. And so it's during that time, during the conversation and just social time, they also throw out little tips and tricks for the specialized sports that the teams are a part of. And, you know, during the summer, we won't be contacting our student athletes as much, but that's an idea. Walter? Yeah. Hello, everyone. Looky here, you can see that temperature check done. Had that medical approval, and we're about to see seniors graduate. We haven't seen them till March 13th. They're finally coming here on campus for our commencement graduation day, so I'm thrilled to be seeing them. I know that spring, our kids that were running a track event, there was one meet that they participated in, and so we all gave them just participation ribbons or awards. And then we're going to have our award ceremony for fall and winter at a later date. But we handed out track participants. Everyone got a participation ribbon. And, you know, we haven't seen their faces since March 13th. So we're very excited to see those senior athletes come back for graduation. Oh, it's nice that your kids are coming back to campus for that commencement ceremony. You know, in terms of reopening schools, it varies state by state. Some of them can, some of them can't, so that's great. So in terms of sports award ceremony, I've seen some of you, you know, already talk about doing awards virtually. Maybe we can discuss various ideas of, you know, what may be needed or what supports. So we can share some ideas here. Hey, Andy. Hello, all. It's good to see you all. I know this is a tough time for all of us, for students, senior athletes, parents. It's a very tough time. You know, many players are disappointed and sad that these track and baseball, softball seasons were cut short and canceled, and frustrated with all of the events being canceled. We did have one track meet and one baseball, softball scrimmage, but after that, everything was canceled. Currently, we're working on end of the year awards, and we will be doing that virtually. Texas did a great job doing theirs. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Andy. Yeah. So our students now have really started to kind of worry about the fall. Spring, it seems to have been done and over with for them. And so they're saying, are we still going to have volleyball and football? Are we going to go ahead with, you know, the spike out tournament? next year. And so everything right now is just up in the air, and we have no answers for them at this time. But we do keep in touch with our student athletes through Google Classroom, giving them different workouts, trying to keep them connected. And then our graduation has been postponed until August 17th. The students decided they still wanted an in-person graduation. So we decided to postpone that until August 17th. And then if we can in person, we will proceed. If not, we will go ahead and do a virtual graduation. So in terms of graduation, you're not having one at this time for this semester?
Graduation was originally supposed to be tomorrow, but it's been deferred to August 17th. Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you, Andy. So for awards ceremony, I've seen many schools doing a great job with how they've addressed that. We ended up using ScreenFlow, which is a software program. It was a lot of work to edit it. All of our coaches send videos, but that ScreenFlow program was relatively user-friendly. We were able to use that. I know some people have used iMovies or other programs for that. But I think the big challenge is how do you actually hand out the awards, having to figure out how to actually distribute those to individual students. So we're going to coordinate that, whether we may be sending out notification to families to come stop by the gym and actually pick up their awards and certificates. But then we'd also have to stagger to ensure that they're not coming all at the same time. So that's something that we're going to coordinate later on. Any further discussion about awards? Because if not, I can move on to another issue. Andy? I just wanted to jump in. I was just wondering if it'd be possible for us to have a discussion regarding fall. I have some of you already canceled this season. Have some of you gone ahead and moved forward with planning? I'd be very curious to know what schools are planning for this fall season. Hey, Andy. Yeah, so actually this afternoon we're going to be having a planning session actually with our superintendent after this. We'll be meeting to discuss further about the fall and hope to have more information after that, but you know, it's up in the air at the moment. Hey, Renee, go ahead. Hi. So we here at Tennessee have already decided to cancel our volleyball and football seasons.
Wow.
Really, we're canceling all sports until we have more decision making. We felt that we couldn't safely conduct our seasons. And so we already have plans for the classroom to come back with masks, to do social distancing, smaller class sizes, and what have you. But we felt that we couldn't cancel the all-day part and then have them go to season and start practice for sports. So we decided to go ahead and cancel, and we're really sad about that. It's unfortunate, but we had to make a decision. Absolutely. Thank you, Renee. Carl? One downside about being in New York, coronavirus has been really bad here. And so our state governor made the decision every 2 weeks. And so that means that we get updates at that time, meaning sports is up in the air. So Lexington, we set up a reopening procedure, meaning that we already have 4 plans in place. And so we have all these backup plans. So if we open in July, what does that mean? If we open in September, what does that mean? If we open October, what does that mean? And then November, December, January, what does that mean? So we have 4 contingency plans. If July, that's the plan to move as expected with social distancing procedures. If we don't open until October, then we would cancel our fall seasons. I suspect our reopening isn't going to happen until January, But like many others, we're up in the air. We have to rely on the governor to make a decision for our fall. Hey, Matthew. Hey, I'm Matt, and I'm here over at the Indiana School for the Deaf. So really, we're in limbo as of right now. We're waiting until probably at least July 1st before any decisions will be made. And so as student life director, we're kind of waiting on the education aspect of it to make that decision. And so we really are facing a lot of unknowns at this point. That's our position at this time. And I also did want to mention in how we're dealing with awards. We will be sending out virtual awards this Friday. And then after Friday concludes, our last day was supposed to be June 5th. So we actually scheduled it June 3rd as a day for parents to come and have drop off because of medications, books, what have you. And so they're able to do a drive-by pickup at the gym, pick up their awards, any items that had been left in the dormitory, then they'd be able to be on their way. There will be no walking around campus, only drive-by services. Thank you, Matthew, for sharing. Appreciate it. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Andy. Our governor yesterday made the announcement that youth sports can proceed during the summertime, that they can get going. And then, for example, daycares can also get going during the summer. Special Olympics, they do have some summer events. They can proceed. However, it has to be under a certain number of participants. So day camps will be opening as well. We expect the high school sports will proceed in the fall, as long as we're not getting a second wave or we're not seeing a spike in cases. So we're under the assumption that we will go ahead with high school sports in the fall, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm be interested to know. Yeah, as of right now, we're trying to figure out what to do with our fans. There will probably be some sporting events that we can have fans there. It depends on if it's high risk, such as football, wrestling, and then some of those low risk events like cross country, golf, tennis, we might be able to proceed with for fans. All right, thank you, Andy. Mason? Yeah, hey, Mason Wood here. We all are proceeding as if we will be reopening. We are going ahead with scheduling our season. It seems that Tennessee is planning to open day camps similar to what was mentioned. However, we are not authorized to have any overnight camps. So we're planning to proceed with business as usual. And I understand that some other folks in Tennessee are canceling their events, such as tournaments. I know that for our particular league that we participate in, we have been in discussion about the possibility of moving forward or if we would be unable to do that. And if so, we may have to move our fall sports to the springtime, which would have its own challenges. Thank you, Mason. Oh, I just want to make sure everyone actually got the NFHS. They sent out about reopening of high school athletics and other activities. I don't know if everyone had received those guidelines, but I think that's a really good place to start. That if your state does permit reopening, that there's a lot of good guidance there. And they have 3 different phases built within that for you to review. So we know that this is going to be challenging. For example, no water bottles can be shared. Any issues with the locker room. You know, we can't have 30 or 40 kids going into a single locker room. They have to be spread out. Then showers, whole other issue. Sharing of equipment. We have to ensure that all equipment has been sanitized properly. And Once things have been used, they have to go be cleaned. And so a lot of that is going to have to be monitored closely. We're also looking at testing, such as doing a temperature check, items like that. And so if they have been checked and passed, they can go ahead with practice. Otherwise not. Teresa? Hi. So we're in the process of phase 2 of opening. And in the state of California, they've been very clear that you are expected to follow those standards, social distancing rules, and what have you. And so it's really impossible for sports to meet those guidelines that they've put out. The only thing that we could do that with are things like golf, tennis, those individual sports. And then also, we're having a 10% budget cut statewide across California. And one particular item that was canceled was out-of-state travel, regardless of whether it's sports or national competitions. We're having to get more guidance on what out-of-state travel is really referring to. And so we're hoping to know by late June to get some answers about things such as out-of-state travel, answers regarding our budget, sporting events and what have you. So we're also still up in the air. All right, thank you. Now, related to the NFHS, if you have not received that, please feel free to reach out to me via email. I'd be more than happy to share those guidelines with you if you'd like. Hey, go ahead. Yeah, I did receive the NFHS guidelines, and I was able to read through those. And that seems to pose another challenge, as you mentioned, the sanitation and what have you. So we're going to try our best to be able to do that. In talking about summer here in Indiana, there's already been some reopening. So for example, my 2 children are part of baseball and softball. And so they do have specific guidance. For example, in the dugout, they have to be spread out. They can't sit closely to one another, which of course is challenging. And then for the fans, it's parents only, immediate family members only. Therefore, friends, grandparents are unable to be a part of it, only immediate family, which has been interesting. They're also going to be doing just kind of a check to see how it goes at first, and then we'll expand to all-star or travel teams and so on and so forth, depending on the success of this. So they're going to be starting with just a few small games, see how that goes. And as that expands, they're going to be able to look at that. So they're only going to do like a game or 2 per week. They're not able to have anything over that, even 2 or 3. And so we're in the process of that. We're hoping through that, that's really going to help us with structuring our own events and see how we could apply some of those to high school sports. But that similar concept of how to put better social barriers in place within sports, and then also considering the government and what all they're putting out to see what we can do that'll be best for everybody. Of course, health comes first, safety as well. Yeah, definitely. I know it's so interesting for like college programs. What are they going to be doing, how they're proceeding? And we would like to see how they go and kind of piggyback on those. It seems like many colleges are already setting up guidance, and that's a lead that we can follow. I agree. I know for colleges, I understand that they are really needing that. They're needing money. And our focus is more so on students having fun. And most of our students are just wanting to play. They're wanting to get back to the sporting arena. They want to play, which definitely is a difference between pro or college level sports. I think what's so interesting about, what is it, NFHS, if I can get the acronym out. What's so interesting about their guidelines, they say it's really up to individual states. And then IHSA says, well, it's up to the schools. And it seems like no one's really willing to make those hard decisions. They keep putting it on other people. No one's really wanting to make those difficult decisions, it seems. And so I just find that so interesting to take a step back and see how they're doing that. One thing about guidelines in FHS, it says it's something related to transportation. I don't know if anyone has made a comment about that, but it's so interesting. They're encouraging short distances. Well, what does that mean for us? That's what I'm wondering. And also encouraging the use of vans, buses, but there's no mention of anything else. And so I just find that such an interesting view coming from NFHS. But again, no one's willing to make those difficult decisions. They're still keeping it vague enough to where everything remains up in the air. Yeah. Ooh, team buses, can you just imagine? It's all going to be very interesting. Hey. Hi, I'm Ron, and I'm from WSD, Washington. A few things. One similar issue to everyone else has mentioned, opening is still a question mark. Budget is another big concern as of right now. The state is underfunded, and so we're concerned about that, and we're going through that budgetary process right now. We're going to be making a proposal to the government this Friday. And then the third issue that we're facing is that we're a residential school as well, and we're roughly looking at a 50-50 split between residential and day students. And so we're looking at how that's going to impact our sports as well. It's possible that some of our residential students will choose to actually stay home during the week, and then half come back one week, half come back the following week, doing like a staggered schedule. And so that could have a big impact. Are we going to have enough players for each team and things like that? Challenging for sure. Just to add a comment to what Washington was just saying in talking about half students coming back during the week and the following week, the other half. And so it'd be so nice to know what the standard is. So we have 150 students, that means 75 and 75. But what about schools with like 175 kids? Does that mean that they're going to do, you know, if, I'm just thinking about how we do those splits. I just think it's so interesting about how they figure out those numbers. Very true. Hey, Mary. Hello. I'm Mary Cook from Rochester. And just looking at Carol's comments from Lexington and their school, Rochester is also New York, but just a completely different situation where we are. New York City, it's just a completely different scenario. I know NFHS had set up a framework for opening, but each region is going to have to set up their own guidance as well. And it's going to really vary across the board. Rochester, right now we have found that distance learning for the summer is going to continue, whereas in the fall, we're not sure what that's going to look like as of yet. Right now we're planning that yes, fall sports are going to happen. We're trying to remain optimistic about it. It's possible we may have to use plan B. If not, and we'll just see. Thank you, Mary. Jesse, it's a little hard to see you because you're backlit. Oh, that's better. Much better. I can't see. Hold on a second. Let me try to close these windows. Better, yes. Thank you. Much better. Hi, Lee. Hi, Jesse. Hi, Katie, too. So, as you know, that they are making the decision. It's all above our heads. It's who will make that decision. But they let us know that if, well, really the south section and north section are very different in what they're experiencing. So far, they've said that they're going to follow the school district. So for example, it's also up to the league. So if my league entirety, if all of them are able to open in the fall, then we would probably be able to proceed with games and matches. That there's a few different matches. One is to go as scheduled, have full season in the fall. There's a possibility that it would be league game only. It's possibility that if some schools within that league are not opening and others are, then that means that it's a possibility of canceling for that league, and then that therefore could impact playoffs. So we're really going to have to probably wait on school districts, whereas we as a state school, we're looking at CF, CDE as well. And so that's really challenging for us. And then in Southern California, all the state universities have announced that they're going to continue with e-learning during the fall semester. So people are now wondering that as a state school, does that mean we're going to have the same sort of impact on us? And so really, we're going to be following CF and CDE, see what they do. But you're right, it's going to be a huge challenge looking at transportation, lockers and locker rooms, the fans, concession sales, how do we social distance concession sales, different types of ordering, what have you. There's a lot of logistics involved, more so than people realize. You're on mute still, Katie.
For sure. It's still going to be a lot of work to plan all of this and just get all of the logistics in order. I read one article recently that said, you know, if in the team sports are open in the fall, there's going to be, you know, an impact if even one student gets COVID-19, then the team is done for their season because they have socialized amongst that player. And so the remaining of the team is going to have to stay home, quarantine for a set amount of time, and then that's going to hold up a season or cancel a season. So we have to be prepared for that, you know. Not only athletes, but any family members of athletes that have been impacted or contracted coronavirus. That is also going to have a huge impact on any athletic seasons. So we have to really think about all of the different facets of this. I think Matthew popped up, but then there we go. Okay. Hey, Matthew. Hi there. Hi, everyone. So I think we're all just in the same boat. We have so many what ifs floating around. I think according to our state, we have to follow their mandates. And one of the things that they've said is that all staff can come back to work on July 1st, can be on campus, but within the next few weeks that could change. So again, it's still an unknown. And in terms of fall sports, the predictability is just not there. We have let parents know that everything is fluid and we need to keep an eye and monitor any changes that may occur. Just keep an eye on the website updates, and you know, we have to make sure that our kids remain safe. And a lot of parents are asking that question of how can you make sure that my kid is safe? And so there's some concern there from the parents. And you know, if something happens, reduction in sports seasons or athletics, is that going to be enough? I mean, in terms of the statewide, you know, up north, we have a lot of rural areas, and kind of down south, we have big cities like Milwaukee and so forth. And so we just have to keep monitoring it. You know, that's also another good discussion, is that some parents may be pulling their kids from athletics because they're not feeling comfortable about letting their student athlete participate in any sports season. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Matt? Yeah, I think we all already have this in the back of our minds, but I think it's worth mentioning that there are just a lot of things, again, quote unquote, up in the air, more questions than answers, but something that we have to consider is any guidelines that have been set up by the CDC, NSHS, local associations, the Department of Education, and we have to really think about our budget, because our budget is going to be the first to be impacted, not just for sports, but we also have to consider any cleaning supplies that may be needed. You know, are those going to be available? Water bottles were mentioned as one of the concerns. So are we going to have to purchase more supplies of water bottles? So there's a lot of budgetary concerns that may be a pain during this time and during this process. That's very true, Matt. Yeah. Eva? Hey, Eva, you wanted to make a comment? Yes, hello. So I can't see myself. I'm not going to fix Zoom, but I'm Eva from the Delaware School for the Deaf. And you all have had great comments that have been stated, but one concern I have is medically fragile students. We've asked them to be a participant in athletics, and with those medical fragile limitations, that has occurred, but now are we limiting them? So that's one of my concerns, is the medically fragile students. Andy? Yeah, I wanted to tack on, all of these different deaf schools, we have sort of additional challenges, unsimilar to what's happening in mainstream public school settings. So for example, our students will be coming from all areas of the states that they're in, different counties. And so we are also boarding schools, like residential programs. That's an additional challenge as well. Also, we have our personnel changing. For example, our gym, we used to have one custodian, one gentleman that would clean the entire building every day. And now with COVID-19, one person is not sufficient for a whole building. We're probably going to have 2 or 3 individuals cleaning that gym. So those are various challenges that we may not be thinking of as of yet. And so it's going to be definitely difficult, as well as, those medically fragile students is always a tough situation. We have parents that may not want their students to be residential anymore and put them into a mainstream school. So many facets involved in this. Thanks, Andy, for your comments. Teresa? Yeah, so again, I'm from California School for the Deaf, Riverside, and one issue that we have experienced is that we have 12 counties that we kind of serve, and the school districts may not be open. Like, for example, one school district has already announced that they would not be opening until August 31st or afterwards. But that means that when we open on August 19th, we won't have our students from that particular county or school district attending for the first few weeks. And so we have to wait until all counties are physically open before we can gather all of our students back. And that's one consideration that we're having in terms of just equity issues with education and athletics. FYI. Matthew? Yeah, hello again. So our business office manager has suggested to our administration that we order and look for different types of masks. Some are face shields, transparent plastic face shields, and just give kids the option of which ones they want to use. We do have to have the kids use those face masks during class time, but I doubt they have anything specifically for an athletic program. And so phase 1 and 2, we would need those things. Phase 3, probably not. But have we considered, I'm just wondering if anyone has considered ordering face masks for their athletic students. Any comments there? Renee? Well, as you know, we canceled our sports seasons, but individuals right now on campus are actually sewing masks for various staff members, and we've ordered masks for our students, giving the choice of having that clear square within the mask or a face shield. I think for elementary students, it's going to be a challenge, and also our Deaf Plus or special needs students. We've also ordered plexiglass dividers for any desks that the students are going to be using, because we can just predict that they will not be keeping their masks on. So that's an issue that we've tried to address. And then there was a comment previously about having so many different counties where our students come from. And, Memphis is about 6 hours from where we are in Knoxville. And if that city is closed, then they will not be able to come to school at our campus, meaning we will continue to do distance learning for those students. And that helps us also make some decisions with the fall sports, because there were so many things involved in that decision. Yeah. Yeah, I know it's definitely a challenge for state schools, residential schools for the deaf, because kids are coming from just different counties, and some of those counties may have been hit bad by coronavirus and it is definitely a high risk or a hot spot. And so that means that if these students are not allowed to come, then you won't have a full team for your season. So yeah, I definitely understand where everyone's coming from. Um, so also discussing just the potential impact of fall sport tournaments. So for example, we have regional tournaments, GPSD, let's see, we have a tournament that will be held up in Maryland, the Spike Out, those regional tournaments that are national for our deaf schools. Are those going to continue in the fall? We're just unsure of at this time, right? And for those tournaments, I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of kids enjoy going to those deaf tournaments the most because without those, sometimes their motivation seems to be less because they're not playing against similar schools. Wade, you had a comment? Yeah, hi, yes. So I was just thinking about sharing with you all, we received from IHSAA, it's required every year for students to have their annual physical checkup before they can participate on any sports team. This year it's actually quite different and it's interesting. So from sophomores to seniors, they will not need an annual physical checkup. We will be able to use last year's physical as being sufficient for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Now, those who are becoming freshmen or transfer students are required to do a physical checkup. And I do understand that situation. I mean, I think it's safe to say I understand that so many doctors are being overrun with patients, hospitals are overwhelmed. There's just not a lot of availability for those regular medical checkups. And so I do understand not needing that for sophomores to seniors. But the fear is that if they are going to play sports, they would need to do a COVID-19 test. I mean, that's a consideration because they will be on a team. However, a lot of students aren't wanting that Q-tip shoved so far up their nose. So I'm assuming that IHSAA is not going to be announcing all of these final decisions until later, but they did mention about not requiring medical physicals and possibility of doing a COVID-19 test before participating in fall sports. I'm wondering if that's anything that y'all have thought about or considered. Yeah, so as athletic directors, we're required screening, before you come in. And so we have our athletic trainer that's able to do any screenings of students to pass, our staff. So we've been using our athletic trainer to do those screenings coming on campus. Okay, so I think for sure it's definitely more work for coaches. We're having to screen before practices. We're going to have some kind of documentation that this has been done, and having to maintain that documentation and that process. You can't just show up to practice as if it's a regular day. We have to go through that process of screening, making sure equipment is clean, making sure all athletes are staying at a distance of 6 feet or more. So yeah, definitely going to be a challenge. Hey, Ron? Yeah, so we require temperature checks before practices and games, as well as requiring a list of all attendees and fans of the games. Primarily for our main sports, it's parents, but if anyone refuses a temperature check or to record their name, then they will not be allowed on campus or allowed in the game. So that's sort of our process and what we're doing. All right, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so just thinking of the impact, I was looking at Tennessee School for the Deaf and how they mentioned that they're not doing their fall sports. And that just really brought out so many thoughts of those individuals that are valuing sports as a priority over academics. And now that athletics are being canceled, the consideration of parents moving their kids into the public or mainstream setting. So how do we ensure that our families stay with our school and not transfer out strictly because of sports? So that's an interesting item that we're going to have to face as well. Yeah, hopefully that won't happen, you know. Wade. Yeah, so David, I've actually heard that comment from other individuals. If you're not going to have sports, then we'll go to another school. And I found out that in California, the governor announced that for college, there's not going to be any fall sports or anything. And so a lot of students have moved into other states, and those are college students. But I remember that we had a meeting, and I think that, you know, our plan for addressing the potential transfer of students is, you know, making those changes before they transfer. You know, the school closed because of COVID-19. And so sometimes we're limiting transfers in because of that. So it has been a big challenge for us of screening, why are you wanting to come to our school? You know, is it because your school closed or is it because of other reasons? You know, that issue was mentioned here in Texas of, you know, especially our senior athletes. They want to play college athletics. And so they're not going to be going to a school that has decided to close their athletics for the fall or for the school year. So they're trying to go to schools that are recruiting for athletics. Renee? Yeah, we made sure to inform our parents to use this time in the fall when we're not going to be having sports to really catch up on academics. Because in spring, hopefully parents and staff are encouraging students to maintain athletics. So we've had students say, well, we're going to quit because there's no sports, but we've explained, you know, that academics and life in the future is going to be priority over sports. I'm curious, what are you doing with any after school programming? If you're not going to have sports, what's the after school programming? We will have some catch-up classes from when we closed. We have cottages, not necessarily dorms. So the cottages are going to be are planning some things to take place. We actually don't have any rec for middle school, so we're trying to figure out different activities that wouldn't require getting in close proximity in groups, more of individual accomplished activities. So we're currently in the process of figuring all of that out and logistics, but we're trying to consider the distance from, you know, areas on our campus. Day students coming onto campus every day, residential students are here and they come to campus during the day. We're going to have to do that temperature check every day, but we still don't know where they've been when they're not on campus. And so we feel like, should we separate those two groups? But we're trying to kind of figure out the logistics of everything. We're in that process right now. Yeah, I think we have to be careful because, you know, residential students, you know, we have to keep them busy because all day, fine, we're at school, but in the evenings, no sports. What are we going to do to keep them occupied? Thanks, Renee. Yeah, Matt? I think it all goes back to whatever guidelines pop up close to time, you know, in terms of where we are. We're seeing early information from CDC guidelines related to preschool, daycares, etc. Those younger age kids, and it's already said no field trips, no this and that. And so they've already outlined some rules. I'm assuming it would be similar to residential students, and so we are going to have to make those changes and tweak how we satisfy keeping our students occupied. You know, I've noticed that many of you already have some guidelines for, you know, summer, and it seems like that's worked out. Most states are permitting certain things amongst guidelines, but in terms of fall, things have not been outlined, and there's still a lot of questions that are being held. Yeah, Boaz. Related to after-school programming, you know, since we've done intramural style game competitions, fall sports may, since they're going to cancel, we may go to more of an intramural limited number of athletes competing against each other. But I think that's going to be our plan for fall if our athletics cancel. I think, Warren, you mentioned something about esports. Warren? Yeah, something about esports was mentioned. Okay, hopefully you all can see me all right. I'm in my Tahoe, I'm at Lake Tahoe, so I'm just parked in my car right now. Hopefully you all can see me. We have continued to work hard keeping our kids busy. And this year we've had 35 out of 400 schools that have continued to play, but we've maintained keeping our students busy.
Great, thank you, Warren, for helping work that out for our student athletes. Yeah, sure, no problem. Thomas? Thank you, Warren. Thomas? Hi, athletic directors and coaches. I know we've talked about having a virtual meeting, and as you've already mentioned, physicals have been something that they've been more lenient on. You have to have it before a certain date, and if so, they will waive it and give you an extension to that previous 1-year expectation. However, if they're promoted to a certain grade, they also qualify. And then for fall sports here, it is a really big question mark for us. And so our deadline to make a determination is June 15th. And so we'll see. At this time, I suspect that we're going to continue with virtual learning in the fall. So thank you. All right. Thank you, Thomas. Thomas, oh, thank you for turning off your screen. Any further discussion about fall tournaments? Any thoughts on tournaments for the fall season? I don't know if anyone's ever bought airline tickets or anything. I know we oftentimes buy ours earlier. I know this is usually a time in which we buy those tickets and make arrangements. Wade, we're just talking about fall tournaments. We already have some who have been wanting to jump on buying plane tickets right now because plane tickets are so low cost at the moment. However, we have to also check, are our parents also feeling comfortable with their athletes being on a plane with other passengers? It's not just folks from ISD. And so that's another consideration. Also, in going to another state when they maybe have a different climate, different situation which they're facing, a lot of unknown folks, how are they doing screenings there? And so it's caused people to pause and take a step back. And so, for example, I know like the spike out in Maryland. Last thing I heard, Maryland was a bit of a hot spot, and they do have some areas there in which they're seeing spikes with COVID-19. So will the spike out be delayed to a later date? Is it going to be November or onwards? And so there's so many things that are dependent upon other factors. But, you know, if parents say to me, so if parents say that they're not wanting their child to go on a trip, I can't say no to them. I can't deny that request. And so that's one thing, definitely. So that's one thing. For example, let's talk about the volleyball team. We have a volleyball team here, but when time comes for the spike out, we may have our numbers decrease because parents are not comfortable. And so it's a huge challenge for sure. And then other than that, looking at the fall different deaf school tournaments, I think that winter and spring, we're going to be looking at how it went in the fall. Was guidance followed? Do we want to host in the winter or do we want to host in the spring? So for example, Indiana is planning to host 2 national tournaments, both wrestling, that's definitely a high risk contact sport, and then also the softball baseball tournament, which is not as bad. So a lot of curiosity surrounding those. And to add to that discussion, will the host still be willing to take on a large number of guests for that? Are the host schools willing to take on that type of liability? I don't know. It's definitely that some of those large tournaments, it's a big impact. As Wade said, another challenge in which we're facing, there's some parents who are very overprotective of their children, safety first, and of course you can't say no to that. And as a coach, I would prefer to bring my full team always. I don't want to take just half the team and let everyone else stay home. That's definitely a challenge for us. And then looking at fall tournaments, some schools are okay with it, some schools are not. And not only national tournaments, but also public school tournaments that could be happening. So we talked about the quality of competition. It could really drop. We're not going to necessarily see improvements on that, especially for large tournaments. And so that may change the planning and organization of that from what it used to be a more limited and less competitive nature of the tournament. And so as mentioned earlier about the budget cuts, 10%, that really impacts our ability to travel, purchasing tickets, what have you. And so there's a lot of money involved with this programmatically. It's a big challenge. And not only that, but as we get more information from government entities between now and July, are things going to be better? Are they going to be worse? Same thing with the Department of Education. And so I'm not crazy about a lot of these last minute decisions, but what can we do? We have to follow their procedures, and it may have a huge impact. It may be very minimal. I know there's concerns among our athletes of them saying, you know, hey, safety first. And they understand the importance of tournament and wanting to win, but recognizing that the focus should be on health and safety. And so just another challenge. Thank you, Jesse. Andy? Hi. Yeah. We're supposed to host the Spike Out this fall, both Division 1 and Division 2. And so that is going to be a huge turnout. And at this time, no decisions have been made. But I suspect that it's not going to be happening for a few reasons. Part of that is flights, another part being dormitory, and then another being the number of people. Just being able to corral that large amount of people is going to be far too complex than we can take on. I know that we do not want to schedule all of our games locally. We're talking about doing that and perhaps not having any out of state and just keeping it as a local schedule. So that is a possibility. And in the fall, if we're unable to go out of state, unable to go great distances, then we're going to be stuck with quite a few gaps in our schedule. So we're having to look ahead at the possibility of doing local games only. It may be something for you to consider as well, having only local games if there's restrictions on travel. Yeah, thank you for your input, Andy. Oh, go ahead, Matthew. Yeah, I think Andy had actually a really good suggestion about having some local options as a precaution. With COVID, of course, that has impacted every single state and it's impacting budgets. Of course, tax revenue has dropped and that's requiring some hard decisions in terms of cuts, sometimes 10, 15, 20%. So if we are able to host not one, but 2 national tournaments, we have to look at costs of overtime, food costs, and all the other factors that come into play, as well as increased sanitation. So again, lots of question marks, more so than we have answers to, and that's something we're going to have to look heavily at. I don't know. I admit that we've been having those discussions, and something that all schools should be keeping that in the back of their mind, right? All right, thank you. Teresa, really have a question. In these discussions, How soon do we want to be informing our athletes? Because athletes are keeping their eyes peeled, wanting to know the wins and hows. So I just wonder how much information we can be sharing with our athletes and when. Are we wanting to wait on that? I want to be thinking about our athletes because they are keeping an eye out. Very true. Wade? I'm just speaking of national tournaments. I know that our athletes are very motivated, keeping an eye out for any of those national tournaments. And similar to what Andy said, is that we are still planning to schedule with local schools, similar to what he suggested, I would go the same route. So we are working on doing some of that scheduling. As far as the national tournaments are concerned, if we make a decision to put those on hold for a year or what have you, some athletes may say, what's the point? I don't want to be a part of it. And we really want to still amp up that motivation for our athletes, even if there's no national tournaments for them to participate in. I know with ISD, there's no real regional tournaments available to our students. They're only going to national tournaments, and then there may be one or two small tournaments, but for the most part, there's no regional tournaments available, which does make it very challenging for us in trying to perhaps find more local tournaments and even considering hosting something locally. And so that's a worry for our athletes at ISD, because if they see there's no national tournaments, it may lessen some of the interest in sporting events. And so that's something that we're also considering. We know that some will want to play regardless. Thank you, Warren. I think that with our work, we need to be thinking more about individual sports based on the IFHS guidelines in phase 2, and maybe putting some more time and effort into the individual sports, whereas phase 3 is focusing on low risk sports and what have you. So that's something that we maybe also need to be considering too. Also the possibility of doing filming of some things and what have you. And then as we get into phase 4, that's when we can have traditional team sports open and playing as usual. And so maybe we need to invest more in doing individualized sports as well as filming, so that way fans can watch a live stream version of the game. Very true. Hi, Janelle, or Jamel, hi. Hi. As said, just wanting to add to your concerns about the fall. In looking at tournaments, we actually have a different perspective. Looking at like the award system and all of that is different from usual, and not being able to have the numbers come in too. So in looking at stats and how that impacts their recognitions, and of course with COVID-19, that's already had an impact. And so looking at the way in which we look at stats, so it may actually force us to have a new perspective on the way in which we track those. And so maybe an opportunity for us to keep our students more motivated. Of course, they want the in-person physical aspect of it, but Chris, Wade, I think as you mentioned, it's something for us to consider the way in which we maintain stats. Yeah, some of you, for example, cross country. Obviously, that's considered a low risk program. And so maybe we should consider setting up, for example, have your school set up a cross country team this fall if you don't already have one. Yep, and it's a pretty inexpensive sport too, to be able to run that program. Renee? Just another different perspective for you. With our coaches, we contacted a few public schools letting them know we canceled, and the public schools were asking why. And they said, you know, because you have students, we have students from Memphis, from Nashville, from all over the place, and those are hot spots. And the public schools were also concerned about playing against us because of that. And so they actually expressed appreciation in us canceling. Of course, we're hoping that basketball will happen, but they had their own concerns about playing against us. So consider that your local schools may not want to play against you with that consideration. Thank you, Renee. Anything to add? If so, we can, if not, we can move on to our next issue. Okay. So now, in talking about NDIAA, I want to share a little bit about what our board has been doing. We have gotten together almost on a weekly basis, having a discussion about various issues, developing national tournament guidelines, also creating a new transfer form, which there'll be more information on that later on. We've also been working on specific sports tournaments such as the Spike Out, the Claire, the Hoyt, and also revisiting any changes that we need to make in those guidelines. And I've really appreciated getting together with the board to be able to talk. It's been a really nice opportunity every week. I think that if you are interested in that type of online discussion, if you want to continue with that, we'd be happy to set up more of those. And perhaps maybe we should set up some kind of discussion related to transfer forms, what it's for, how that works, so that way everyone can be in the know for the fall and moving forward. Carl? Chris, as you mentioned, NDIAA has had a lot of online discussion. I think that's great. I'm wondering if maybe next month, perhaps, as we all are able to have more information, maybe have a meeting 1 week next month. I know have kind of further discussion. I think that'd be great. Absolutely. You know, of course, I think it'd be leading up to your conference too. Hopefully that conference will be happening with the barbecue and what have you. Yeah. I know TSD was planning to host an NDIA conference this coming March 2021. So fingers crossed that that can still happen. Warren? I know NDIA has been getting together. Good job. And I think one thing would be talking about website, and I'd be very interested in looking at baseball, softball records, because I know recently that was set up, and I think it'd be really fun to get that together. And so if you'd be interested in sending me any records, football, basketball, what have you, anything like that, I'd be curious to know what people are wanting to see on the website. I'd love to get your perspectives. Any other sports that we need to add in? So what records are you talking about? Are you talking about specifically team records, tournament records? What are you speaking of? Individual record, points, team records as well? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, rushing yards, shooting, yeah, all of that. We'd really like to have all of your records put into a single place. It'd be really nice to have that. And I'm just wondering if that's something you'd all be interested in. Any thoughts on that? Oh. Thank you, Warren. I think that'd be really cool. I think we should go ahead and do it. I think it'd be very motivating for our students, something for them to check out, see some of those fun facts. And so I think we should go ahead and do it. David's saying, I support what Warren said as well as what Andy said. I think it's really just value added for all of our deaf schools. Oftentimes we can't compete with public schools. However, we have to recognize that our competition is other deaf schools and deaf athletes out there. You know, probably was it 90% of deaf children, they have hearing parents. And so how can we beat that? And so I think this is a great idea. Add some of those stats out there. I think it'd be wonderful. Thank you, Warren, for doing that. And I do recognize that many athletic associations, they have their own, like I know IFHS has their records that they maintain and states have different records. So I think it'd be really nice to keep something on national level for schools for deaf to share amongst themselves. I agree with that. I think it'd be really nice. Like David said, it's a lot of value added. Carl, Warren, did you have something you were going to say? Oh, well, the reason why I mention it is because right now we have a lot of downtime on our hands. So it'd be a good project for us to be able to invest in. You know, for some of you, you may, you know, during a regular season, we have hardly any time to do something like this. I think it's just a good opportunity while we have a little more downtime. Well, it seems you have time to visit Lake Tahoe. A little bit. Carl. Okay, really, I just wanted to point out about the USADF, that they have track records for deaf schools. I really think everyone should have football, basketball, soccer, baseball, softball, the whole gamut. It'd be so nice for all of our sports to have it, so I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Carl. Warren. Yeah, I'm assuming that everyone willing, if I could find some volunteers who'd be willing to help me input that data, if you could please send me your school records, individual records, what have you. I know we've probably got, what, over 35 schools. So if you could send those over to me, I could get those all together. Yeah, Warren, for sure. He will need your help. So if there's anyone who's interested in helping Warren, please let him know. And we can assign folks to different sports. And so we can have a person who's kind of leading up even those. Baseball and softball's been taken care of. And then also track as well, but we need fall and winter sports. That's where I'm needing some assistance. Okay, great.
I know also that if there are any other issues that you want to discuss this time, feel free to throw them out here on this platform. Just kind of thinking about if there's any issues that you want to do for a next webinar, that's fine. I don't mind setting something up at a later date. I just want to make sure that we're all kind of getting the ground under our feet in this process, and that we really want to show that we have some camaraderie and some support for each other. I think this seems like we're wrapping up. Many thanks to Chris for your leadership in this discussion. A lot of topics that we covered were very important, and I think we all got a sense of validation today in what we're doing. We had 38 people participating in this session, which is a very high number. Athletics and schools. Athletics is sort of the PR for the schools that we're at. But everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and keep on keeping on. All right, thanks so much. And thank you, CEASD, for hosting this. Appreciate it. All right, bye, everyone. Hey, Chris. I have something for you. Chris, you see me? Chris. All right, everyone, have a great summer. Bye. Beautiful. Stay safe, stay healthy. All right.